Welcome back. It's been a few days since I've tried any puzzles, so I'm going to try some. It looks like we have an endgame puzzle here, and I am playing with the black pieces. So I have one more pawn than my opponent. No, I have one fewer pawn than my opponent. Pardon me. My opponent has 4 pawns. This is one thing, this ties into my working on my weaknesses, endgame tactics. There's a right move here and a wrong move. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been made into a puzzle, logically. And often in these end games, there are only right moves and wrong moves from when I've analyzed my own games. So, I have a few choices here. If I don't advance this pawn, my F pawn, or capture, I assume if I leave this here and make some other move, like advance my A pawn or advance my H pawn, then I assume White's next move would be to take that. That would leave one fewer pawn for them. And that tells me that I probably need to do one of those things I just mentioned with my F pawn. I think regardless of what I do here, I think White's plan is fairly obvious. They want to get rid of this pawn and create a passed pawn on this side where they have, I was going to say where they have a majority. They don't technically have a majority on the king side because it's 2 for 2. And over here they do have a majority. I'm not sure exactly what the best way is to clear that out for them. But I do know if I make a time-wasting move, they're going to probably capture this pawn. And even if I capture back, that's going to leave me one move further from this pawn. So, I believe that the correct move is to move forward, not to capture. The reason is because if I capture, this is still not a passed pawn. If I capture on g4, my pawn then still runs into the h pawn, and then my h pawn will run into what is now the g pawn here. It doesn't make any sense to move either one of these. That's just time wasting because of that. And then my opponent can clear off this pawn and I can't get to it in time. Or maybe they come this way and then they have 2 passed pawns over here. So I'm going to move my F pawn forward. We're going to cross our fingers. And if I get it wrong, I'm going to go to the analysis real quick and figure out why. Okay, that was correct. Okay. Simple logic. The king surprised me. I again thought it was going to go for my A pawn, but it makes sense now because I'm only 3 squares from promotion with my F pawn that it would move toward it. I can't run the pawn on its own because if I do, the king gets there in time. And then if I promote, they capture. So, I believe I have to move my king, which keeps their king from coming closer. And again, I no longer am worried about either of these pawns, because if this one tries to advance, I capture it. If I move my king and White does something over here, this should be enough to stop at least one of those pawns if it gets close. Plus, neither of those pawns is as close as this one. So I move forward. Their king can't come in. So the only way it can get any closer is to go this way. And then I move forward again? Or at that point, do I advance? Wow. If I move forward and if their king moves forward again, if I advance, their king can get around me and still get there in time. So I would have to move my king forward one more square. But I believe the king to e4 is my best move here because I don't see anything else. Okay, and it did move forward. And as we just calculated, now if I don't move my king forward again, they get there in time. So I need to move my king forward one more time to prevent their king from moving to d2. I don't want to get in front of my pawn. That's bad, because that allows their king closer and blocks my own pawn. And I can't get closer to them. And I certainly don't want to go away from them, because then they go this way. Right? So move the king forward again. Okay, now they can't catch it because they can't go to d2, so they would have to go this way, and they're not in time. So now I move my pawn. Move my pawn again, I think. If I move my pawn and they come here, it doesn't save me any time to capture it because they capture back and they're still going to have a pawn on b6. So if I move forward, they come here, I promote. And whether they capture or go past, I've still got a whole nother move before they promote. And I think I can win their pawns at that point by something like this check, picking up the a pawn, and so on. So I'm going to move my pawn. Okay. All right. Well, that only took 6 minutes, but we got it. 21-19. All right. 8 in a row, too. Continuing from my previous streak. Well, let's click next. And if you've noticed, before I click next, if you've noticed my last few videos, I've only done 2 puzzles or so. I'm trying to take it more slowly. A, to make sure I get them right, and B, to not overload myself on each day. I'm just checking the theme really quick. It looks like opposition and passed pawns were themes of this puzzle, and this puzzle was rated 2005. I don't know if you can see it right there above my head. My camera's almost cutting that off. But anyway, so I'm solving puzzles rated over 2000. All right. This is a rare puzzle that starts off with me being in check. White has just taken my rook and put me in check. Now, I have 2 ways to move out of check. One way to block, but that seems foolhardy. They would just pick it up. So my choices are to move my king to h7 or f7. In general, I would assume h7 is safer, just because I can't be checked again. But I want to make sure, because sometimes that's not the best answer. I do notice that I have a rook down here pointing at this square, but my king is guarding that square. If I moved forward to f7, the queen wouldn't come here to check because my queen is guarding that pawn, but their queen could go to b2 and check me, and then I would end up having to go around this pawn again. So it makes sense, I think, for me to go to h7 to escape this check. They would not have a safe follow-up check at that point, although they could move their queen to b2 anyway, and then have the aforementioned rook and the queen both pointing at that pawn, and I would be in trouble. I just noticed something. I have mate in 1. So I'm guessing they're going to throw away a piece when I move to h7, whichever square I choose. But again, if I move to f7, they have a safe check. So let's say I go to h7. At that point, I think they're going to have to do something. Well, they're going to have to do something to stop my mate in 1 threat. Like move a rook forward. But then I would take here maybe. Not sure. But h7, it's got to be king to h7, right? Nothing else makes sense to me. Okay. Oh, they did throw away a piece because I have the mate in one. So they decided not to mess around with trying to block my path there. And this ensures another check on their part. When I capture, they're going to check here. But then I would just move out of it, right? And that makes me wonder if I shouldn't move out now. No, that's bad. Because if I move out of check now, they're going to go here, and that would be very close to mate. I would have one block, and then they would capture that, and that would be mate. So I do need to capture the rook at this point, because those are my only two legal moves. I can't capture the rook with any other piece, and I can't move my king to any other square except h6. But again, h6 results in this. So I have to capture the rook. Forced, pretty much. Okay, now they check with their other rook. Have to be very careful here. Because again, there is the threat of the queen moving to one of these two squares if, for example, I went to h6. If I went to h6, the queen wouldn't have to go all the way there. The queen could go to f8. Want either of those two squares for the follow-up check. Because h8 might not be great because I could block with the bishop. But f8, I wouldn't be able to block with anything. So that makes me wonder if I don't need to block with the bishop now instead of moving out of check. Because I can move out of check 3 different ways. And I think we've already discussed if I stay on the 7th rank, the queen checks me on b2. And then they would be preparing a mate on their own right here, wherever I moved after that. So I think I've narrowed it down to either h6 or blocking with the bishop right now. h6, I think, results in queen to f8 check, which I cannot block. And then I would be starting to run out of squares, have to go to one of these places. And then if I went to h7, then that would be mate. So I think I block with my bishop now. That still allows b2 check. But then I go to h6 and they don't have a follow-up check. Not a safe one. Okay, I'm going to block with the bishop. That was it. They took it. Now here it would be silly to do anything but take, right? Because again, the queen can team up with the rook if I don't capture. For example, if I move to h7, then that's mate. g8. Pretty sure. If I go to f7, that's not mate, but it's getting close. Getting close. Because then I would have to go here, and then the rook would come down, and I would have to go here, and then the queen comes over, or maybe all the way back here. So I would be getting in trouble. I think I have to take it. Now, if I take it, I assume they're going to follow up with a check on g8. And then I'm going to have to decide whether to get out of that check this way, or this way. But that's better than not taking. if I don't take, I think the queen comes here and I'm in serious trouble. So, okay, that was it. As long as it went, I was worried the next move was going to be here, and then I would have too many choices, and I'd have a hard time picking the right one. Okay, but I got it, and we're still at 15 minutes. Should I go again? That puzzle was rated 2105. If you can see there. Oh, and there's no theme. What was the theme? Desperado? Is that what? I think that's what White was engaged in, were desperado checks. I'm going to suggest that theme. Okay. And I'm going to click next. I don't know if it's a good idea. Wow, another end game. Okay. We are even on material. And I am playing with the black pieces. I am in check. If I move out of check, I assume they're going to capture my queen. Because that's what I would do if I was White. Which makes me pretty sure that I have to capture their queen now. And then they will capture back because they'll be in check. And then I will have to decide which of these two pieces to move and where. Because I will definitely have the advantage at that point to be able to, well, not there. So not there probably. But yeah, I will have to, at that point, start heading toward that pawn so I can get my pawn passed. But I'm pretty sure on the first move. Let me just run that logic through my head again. If I do anything except take the queen, for example, move out of check, one of many ways that I can move out of check, 6 different ways, that's their next move. It's got to be. And then I'm just lost. So I'm going to take their queen. Okay. So now, do we move my pawn forward and then go for theirs? Or do we move the king first? That's a good question. I don't think we move the king first. And this is my reasoning. Right now, my king is slowing down their king. It's pretty well positioned to keep their king off of these 3 squares right now. Another thing is, if I move my pawn first, that gives their pawn far fewer choices. I mean, obviously their pawn only has 1 choice on the next turn, but if I don't move my pawn, their pawn has further choices. So I think I move my pawn first, a5, and then what's their king going to do? Move into opposition? Because then my pawn's going that way, up the board. So coming around this way would not be a good idea. And coming this way would not be a good idea either. It wouldn't work because my king gets there first. But if I move my king first, I don't know what they would do. Would they bring their pawn or move their king? I don't know, but the whole point of this, the only way I can win is to get this pawn closer to promotion and eventually promote. So it makes sense to me to move my pawn 2 squares now. And then if they do come forward, it's a pretty simple matter for me to get to it and chop it off. The only question I have is, I know that especially with a flank pawn, A file or H file, maybe even the G and Bs. I'm not certain because I haven't done enough of these. I'm still studying pawn and king endgames. And I'm sure that study will continue for years as long as I keep playing chess. But I do know that if I get this pawn far enough, and I use my king to knock that pawn out, and if I waste too much time over there with that, their king has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns to get to that corner. And if they can get in front of that pawn, they can end up stalemating me. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, sorry. I'm counting wrong. Sorry, this will be my 1, 1. And then there I don't know which way I should go. Well, I have to take their pawn out. So 2, 2. Three, 3. Take the pawn. 4, 4. I get to the corner first, I think. And then from here, I can prevent their king from coming to any of the squares that could get them to the corner. Okay. I'm going to move my pawn first. I lost 8 points. Okay. Was it a king move first then? It was a king move first. And now I still haven't hit the analysis or hint button. I'm still trying to figure this out for some reason. Now if I take the pawn, they go that way, and I come this way, and I keep them out of the corner. No, but then they get closer to my pawn. So now do I move my pawn? Because if not, they maybe get to my pawn first. I mean, if I capture... No. I think I'm close enough to keep them out of the corner, so I'm going to move my pawn. It's still wrong. Okay. Well, since you're here, and we've gone past the 20-minute mark now, what happened? No, I'm not replaying the puzzle. I clicked the analysis, didn't I? Okay. We did that. And that was it. Okay, now, I must have clicked the retry button by accident. My question here, which I know it's cropped a little funny, is we know they did that, and I captured, and they captured. My question was, why is this... How can they beat me if I move my A pawn first? I'm seeing the analysis up there. Stockfish is very clear that this is the only move that doesn't allow white to somehow draw me. And I thought I had calculated that I could get to the corner before them if I moved my pawn now. But look at that. The top 3 moves up there are king to c4, king to d4, c4, d4, or c5, but not the pawn move. So what happens with the pawn move? It says we're completely drawn now because they go here. But I didn't I calculate this out? What can they do now? It says they're going to go to king to e4. Okay, fine. And I'm going to go here, and they're going to go to d4. And I'm going to take the pawn. It says now they would go to c4. But that doesn't make any sense, does it? Oh, I just saw it. Because now if I go to a4... Oh no, I didn't see it. I was thinking the king could go here and I would have to move away, but I wouldn't. I would go there. But it says the king can go here and I have to move away. And then it goes here. Okay. Now, what happens? Oh, if I move my pawn, what do? They go here. Oh, if I move my pawn, they go there, and it's a draw? Now okay, it's a stalemate for nobody has a legal move. Okay. So I did calculate that I could keep them out of the corner, but I did not calculate that they could keep me in the corner. And that's where it went wrong. Okay, so after they took my queen, I had to make the king move toward their pawn first. And now it says basically no matter what they do, I can win this race. So whether they go to g4 or f4 or even move their pawn, it doesn't matter. Okay, we learned something. Thank you for watching. What was my puzzle rating dropped to? Well, it's not even shown there now. That puzzle was rated to 2222. And I failed. My puzzle rating went down to whatever it was. And we'll have to try again next time.